Alright guys, HyDra again. I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far with the World Championship a couple of weekends away. Skyz has given his perspective on how OpTic might potentially fare, especially with how Shotzzy compares to HyDra. Skyz team with both of those guys, yes, Shotzzy for not that long, but he definitely got some experience alongside him and says that in many respects he's very similar, if not maybe in some ways even better than HyDra in some capacity. What does this mean for OpTic's chances towards the end of the season with the World Championship looming? Could OpTic go back-to-back? Of course, they took down Skyz and Shotzzy did in the grand finals of last year's event. Very much into your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. What do you guys think about this, by the way? We saw this the other day with Ghosty and Scrappy, wasn't it? When they were doing this reaction time test. Now, I'm not going to lie. SGL doesn't even try. Like, if you're going to try, you got to at least be ready to go for it. We know that Kenny, the way that he did it, of course, in a second. And to be fair, SGL didn't even do bad, all things considered, I would say, given his approach and his setup here. Kenny was definitely more locked in, although, you know, if you watched that Pierre Gasly and stuff do this, Scrappy did a pretty good job the other day, to be fair, as well. Does this matter much? I know people talk a lot about reaction time and how important it is. Well, I think often reaction time gets somewhat overrated in terms of the factors that are really important. Yes, if you look at esports players, they will on average have faster reaction times than, you know, the majority of normal people. You know, you potentially can even train it as well. There's lots to talk about that nowadays. But a lot of the time, it's less about that, and it's more about just knowing where the enemies are going to come from and being prepared for that, right? Like, you know, game sense is certainly a factor, but, you know, reaction time is a big one. Whether this is really that relevant or actually matters much is a bit of a different question. There's also been talk about the new Black Ops game, comparing all the current Black Ops games, BO1, BO2, BO3. You know, there was certainly a decline around about here. You guys know that I have a particular soft spot for BO1, like that was my first ever COD game. And then, you know, I don't need to talk about the other games here, but you know what I'm talking about anyway. BO7, though, is coming soon. We know that HyDra, among others, have talked as if BO7 could be enough to bring them back in. I know that, you know, among us and the comments and stuff, and I totally understand it, there's lots of cynicism nowadays from the fans about whether the game is actually going to be any good or not anymore, and certainly the optimism around it has decreased over the last few years. I will just say quickly, there was a bit of talk about how much development time was spent on BO7 compared to BO6. Because, of course, BO6 was the first COD game that Treyarch had introduced in many a year. Cold War came out in 2020, right? Like, it's a long time they had to work on BO6. But it doesn't really feel like a game that took 4 years to make, does it? Let's be honest. So that's why there's been some questions as to whether, while they were developing Black Ops 6, they were also largely working on the upcoming title, which is going to be BO7. Hopefully that's true from a maps perspective as well, because the maps are a big issue right now in BO6, and everyone agrees with that. But Charlie Intel said, as far as they know, they've been in development almost at the same time for lots of the game. It's also what the COD GM said in the blog, that 2 games was the plan for since the start of this, basically. And says the main focus became BO7 during post-launch as well, and then yes. So there's a feeling that Treyarch have been prioritizing BO7 now for, you know, well over a year. And especially once BO6 hit the market, it was pretty much all guns blazing on the new title. That's how it seems at the moment. Bit of roster drama. We're not sure exactly what these teams are going to do right now, but this is pretty funny. So Drill was talking to his chat. He gave his chat a budget to be general managers. And the main funny thing about this is that Clayster notes in the replies is how the budget that was given to Falcons was, let's say, rather not even ambitious, but you know, you could effectively do what you wanted. So just before we go through what people actually drafted and what some of these teams look like, Drill gave each of his general managers for each of the teams 10 minutes to decide and you know, give them a salary from their budget and all this, and then they could talk to players, and anyway, they could basically put their rosters together. These are the rosters that these guys came up with, and I know that there's many fans looking at these, and I know that OpTic fans are saying, damn, if that's our team. So the OpTic team that they put together, or Ahmed put together here with a budget of 1.65 million, was Dashy, 04, Shotzzy, and Simp. So, you know, I don't know so much about that. The funny thing really, and Clayster was noting this in the replies, I think it was maybe this tweet that Clayster was in the replies saying, yeah, unlimited, quadruple question mark, and that's because Falcons were given effectively an unlimited budget to decide decide what they wanted to do. So, they went out and signed, in this hypothetical scenario, HyDra, Pred, Cellium, and Scrap. Now, here, Boston and Ravens were to stay, and they didn't, of course, have the budgets that some of the other teams had, so they formed rather different rosters. But it is interesting to see what's going to happen in the off-season, right? Because, what is FaZe's budget? I mean, this aBeZy, Simp, Drazah, and Mercury's team, like that, there would be some pace on that roster for sure. And then Cellium gets stolen by Falcons in this hypothetical. Honestly, who really knows? But I think the off-season is going to be very interesting because, Falcons aren't necessarily going to play around. We've got these other Saudi teams that aren't necessarily going to play around either if they come into the league. Right now, we're not really sure what that's going to look like, but rumours about Twisted Mind and about Alcatia Esports and other organisations looking to take over some of these franchises. We know what Falcons have done elsewhere. It wouldn't be a massive surprise that now they've moved on from the Saudi project. And okay, Exnid is still around, and I imagine that's going to stay. I don't expect them to get rid of him, but if their budget really is unlimited, then yeah, that's probably what they'll do. And where Exnid would end up in the league outside of that, I think it is an interesting question just to ask the community, really. Like, if Exnid was to get dropped off Falcons, does he get picked up by another team? I think the answer should be yes, but maybe that wouldn't necessarily happen. Just a bit of follow-up on yesterday, because Clayster was talking about Jimbo, and then this guy, HyDra, who, either is Jimbo or bought Jimbo's accounts for some reason. It's all rather confusing, but Clay and HyDra were in the replies to this whole story yesterday. But I wanted to talk about lots of the reaction going into the World Championship, right? This is the World Championship placements and KD for Simp over his career. Started off like ludicrously well. And interestingly enough, in 2022 and 2023, his KD was actually not maybe what you'd expect it to be, even though the team still came top 3 and went deep in the tournament. His run last year was actually his 3rd highest KD ever at a tournament, but didn't win it, of course. They bombed out top 6 in the end phase, and very nearly as a result decided to blow up their roster, make some serious changes. In the end, they did not. Of course, 2019 was the legendary run where he came into the league, immediately started dominating, won a couple of events in a row, won the World Championship, Mr. MVP, and all that type of stuff. Last couple of years, they have been more challenging, but, breaking point, as the tweet says, he's won the last 2 COD champs on Treyarch titles. When we've seen Cold War, when we've seen BO4, Simp's won them both. Does that mean anything? Maybe, maybe not, we'll see. But speaking of Simp, he replied to Attach, who was running the Black Ops 2 veteran campaign. But speaking of Attach, he's been running some great content since he's called it a day from his competitive days. Look, is he going to return to play? I don't think so. I would like to see Attach come back. I know that he has talked about it if BO7 is particularly promising, that he might consider it. But also for somebody like Attach, he's not going to come back and grind challenges, is he, right? Like, if he's going to come back, he wants to be on a Pro League team. That might be a bit of a challenge. For example, Donny Temp, I think, has said, look, he's going to return for BO7. If he has to play in challenges, collegiate COD, he'll do that for a bit to get back in the Pro League, right? That'd be the plan. For guys in Attach's position, probably less so. And if you're iLLeY as well, I don't know if iLLeY would be particularly keen about doing the challenges thing again. But he did a great interview with Skyz the other day. I'll leave the entire thing linked down in the description if you guys want to check out the whole thing. But there was a couple of interesting clips here from the Skyz topic that I wanted to get into. And he was talking especially about Shotzzy versus HyDra. So Skyz played with HyDra, and played with HyDra when he was possibly the best player that we've ever seen. Modern Warfare 2 HyDra was the hard carry that we have had pretty much in the CDL era, I would say. I don't think there's not been a performance, a season-long performance, certainly not towards the end of the season, in the entirety of the CDL than what HyDra was for that New York team at the end of Modern Warfare 2. And to be fair, we saw it once HyDra was off the team. What happened shortly afterwards, certainly this season on the Gentamates, for example. So Skyz knows what it's like to play with a player of that caliber, but he also got the chance to play with Shotzzy, another player of a top-tier caliber. And to be fair, Shotzzy in recent weeks started to improve, I would say, quite substantially and make some progress towards the World Championship. Now, when Skyz played with Shotzzy a couple of months ago, maybe it wasn't quite the same story, but nonetheless, this is what he has to say.
I think you might be one of the only, very few people probably have. I don't know if anyone else has besides you. You've teamed with HyDra and Shotzzy. What would you say? Because people compare their playstyles. Like when you watch them a little bit, it looks pretty similar, like with the dives, the movement and everything, the finesse. How would you compare those two on an individual level now that you've teamed with both of them?
fuck, I even said it on stream, like, it's kind of hard to compare because I only got 1 month with Ant.
That's true.
But
And
that
you have
1
years
month with Ant,
Paco.
I still think he's like one of my top 3 subs that I've had.
Mm.
Like, obviously, I'm putting Paco like number 1.
I mean, you have to. You had so much
I literally
history.
won tournaments with him, like
A ring.
Like, I have so much respect for him, like, as a teammate and player in person and everything. But Ant, I still, I mean, I respect him like probably the same amount, bro. I just had more reps with Paco.
Of course.
But Ant, I'd say Ant's, I guess, faster, and he's very ratty like Paco. But I don't even know. Like, they're pretty similar. Just Ant just plays a little faster than him. But they're pretty similar. Behind
the scenes, though, like when it goes outside of game, like work ethic, I feel like everyone talks about Ant, like, oh, Ant, because he's like, you know how he acts on stream and everything. He's like, bro, Ant is just so dumb. He just has no brain. But I feel like he's a lot smarter, especially when he's in serious mode when it comes to Call of Duty. How is it like working with him behind the scenes?
He's a godlike teammate. Like I only had 1 month in him, but like he's always watching VOD and always pulling up. We're always watching clips on the TV, but like he's always like talking about the situations that are happening like on the map. So he's usually initiating the conversation a lot.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was doing that with him too as well. But I don't know. I think he's a very smart player, very impactful. Sometimes holding iron, my boy.
Sometimes he's a little too rough.
Yeah, but like
at
the same time, it's good deaths, but like like a 10% time he scams sometimes.
Yeah, of course. It's like to make him the perfect player.
So Shotzzy's World Championship run, also very impressive, right? In some respects, not that dissimilar to Simp's. I mean, you know, first, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, so it was kind of getting worse. But then, of course, he won it again last year in Modern Warfare 3. So, look, you look at the numbers on the season, yeah, HyDra's been the top performer, right? And to be fair, Shotzzy this year as a player, you know, is he S tier? There's no way. Is he A tier? I mean, we did our tier list the other day. We put him kind of in the middle to upper pile of the B tier this season, Shotzzy, because in my opinion, based on the way that Shotzy's played this season, you can't justify him being much better than that. But in terms of just like his actual impact and average performances and stuff like this. But obviously there's more to it than that, because a player can be incredibly talented and skillful with huge potential and not necessarily show it all the time. And I think that's kind of what Skyz is getting at, to say that in some respects, HyDra and Shotzzy play COD in a similar way. And I think they, you know, they kind of do. It depends. I mean, Shotzy's a bit more ratty, I think, as Skyz was getting at. HyDra is a bit more slaying focused. They also both play very quickly. Like, I'm not sure I really agree with the argument that, you know, HyDra plays slower than Shotzzy or Shotzzy plays faster than HyDra. I think they play at a pretty similar pace, actually, and HyDra sometimes is. HyDra's pace goes underrated because he has so many kills. It's almost impossible to believe that somebody can get this many kills and still play at a really fast pace, but that's basically what HyDra does, and you can see it from his Slayer rating numbers here as well, compared to Shotzy's numbers this season, which, I mean, okay, these are the last 5 games, but certainly not as strong as you would see from HyDra. Now, like, is HyDra on a stronger team right now? Does he have Scrappy on his roster, and OpTic maybe haven't had a player this season quite of that caliber? Okay, sure. That's an argument as well. But this season, HyDra's, you know, cleared Shotzzy, no doubt. But Skyz, having played with him for at least a month or so, recognised that in many respects, even though Shotzy's individual performance this season hasn't been where he would want it to be, although of course his overall numbers on the season are still pretty strong, there's also other factors outside of the game as well, right? Sky's talking about Shotzy's preparation in the VOD, preparation for matches, and the way that he talks about and thinks about the game, which maybe reminds him a little bit of when he was teaming a couple of years ago with HyDra. So yeah, I think impressive players on both parts. HyDra still is the gold standard for SMGs right now, but as far as Sky seems to believe, is like, look, Shotzzy has the potential anyway to play at that type of level, and if he does, then who knows what happens at the World Championship, because Shotzy's been turning up lately. Shotzzy made it pretty clear as well, it's the search and destroy that's going to be mostly relevant for the World Championship, right? Because in the respawns, you're never going to be able to build a team that's going to be able to beat FaZe, be able to beat Thieves in 60% of respawns. It's just not going to happen. So if you can try and win 45% and you can win the majority of your search and destroys, then you have an opportunity to make some serious damage happen this tournament. But very much enjoyed your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.